You know, it feels weird looking at this railroad track, seemingly leading to parts unknown, but yet it cuts off right about here into nothingness. What's up, you guys? Chet Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all from the small town of Townsend, Tennessee, just at the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is probably one of the most visited and one of the most well-beloved national parks here in the United States. But today, guys, we are not here to talk about the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We're here to talk about trains. Yes, I said it, trains. You see, in the early days of the Smokies, when all of this was virgin timber and these lumber companies were coming from all around the United States to strip this virgin timber to build houses, build timbers and whatnot, the lumber companies would build a series of railroad tracks that would wind all the way up and down the mountains, going to Tellico Plains in Tellico Plains, Tennessee, all the way to Sweetwater, and all the way to Chattanooga and Atlanta, or going all the way to Knoxville and into Kentucky, and then, well, hopefully Cincinnati. Locomotives and trains were used a lot in this process to get this heavy virgin timber off the mountains and down to these communities, these cities, these towns. Well, for about 40 years, from the 1880s to the 1920s, those lumber companies stripped absolutely everything. And with it, the railroad tracks went abandoned. Slowly over time, National Park Service was created, the federal government took over, and from there, the railroad tracks were stripped, thus leaving behind a few artifacts, a few relics and ruins from the past. And today, you guys, what you all are looking at is the Little River Railroad Museum. You see, these railroad tracks are what is left of the Wallace Train Depot. And this is the old Wallace Train Depot, all original down to the last board and nail. You see, for about 4 decades, people here in Townsend, they would wait here along the railroad tracks, waiting for the trains to come down the mountains and to allow them to go to other parts of the United States. Also, this was a junction between the Southern Railroad and Little River Railroad. You see, these two railroads, they would switch lumber cars. And up until the 1920s, this was a major tourist stop. So today, guys, we are going to explore the grounds of the Little River Railroad Museum, a historical landmark here at the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. Let's do it. Anchor down. If y'all are curious what the Wallace Depot looked like back in those days, this is a really good picture of that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the post office is a replica, however. But if I'm not mistaken, the Wallace Train Depot is original. But this is a pretty good build on. And you can't really tell which one is older. I find it very interesting that these railroad tracks at one point did serve a purpose. Only now they go to nowhere. Which kind of leads us on to our first real major artifact that is here on the grounds. As loggers came through the Great Smoky Mountains, they used a lot of portable sawmills, or I should say portable steam engines, if you will. These portable steam engines would be hauled up the mountains by horse and locked into place. And from there, they would use these big giant steam belts right here, hook them up to leather, and from there, they would use the steam and that would power a big giant saw blade. However, the Little River Lumber Company that ran through these mountains, they never really used these. Instead, in the early days of logging history, these were used by contractors and brought through the mountains. Definitely An easy bit of ingenuity back then. But those horses must have been quite strong to go through the or pull this through the remote wilderness, which is honestly, I think this is probably about maybe 2 tons. And now this is my all-time favorite attraction, or I should say a relic, here at the Little River Railroad Museum. Way back when I was a young dream poet, a young Chet Guthrie, my family would always go through Townsend to get to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. And as a kid, we would always pass this train. And no matter how many times I asked my parents, hey, can we stop here? They never did. Until, well, my college years, I was able to get up close. And this is what I found out. This is a Type C Shea locomotive. And I want you all to notice something about this Shea locomotive and what makes it so special to the Smokies. If you see, these wheels are not your average set of wheels. They're grinded. They're all geared. This thing was meant to haul heavy loads of wood and lumber up and down the mountains. Now, there is a thing about these wheels. You see, these wheels, they would be going along a track that would take a beating. You see, the tracks along in the Great Smoky Mountains during the lumber days, they were not meant to last long. You see, the railroad tracks that ran through the mountains, they were only meant to last a couple of years. And so why these wheels also helped out so much is because they could take the beating to keep going and to keep hauling wood until the time in the mountains was done. Now this Shea engine in particular, this is a 2147, and this big baby is about 70 tons. This one was constructed by the Lima Locomotive Works in Ohio for the Babcock Lumber Co. in Tellico Plains. And if I'm not mistaken, this train operated between 1932 and 1935 until its time was done. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe it did run as a tourist train and, well, was used to later buy up 2 more Shea locomotives. However, the sad thing is, this Shea locomotive, this one in particular, with its big grinding gears and big grinding wheels, this is the last one of its kind. The only one that was not scrapped or torn apart, auctioned off, and later disappear. To this day, it sits here, the Little River Railroad Museum, just kind of not really rusting away, but living out its retirement years. Just look at how big that big giant steam boiler is. Again, it just feels so weird to watch these train tracks just disappear into the mud. Kind of makes me wish if I was born 100 years earlier, I would have loved to have seen this train in action. But sadly, it goes into nothingness. It just disappears into the mountainside. I also want to add the Little River Lumber Co. water tower. This is the actual lumber tower for Walland and the Wallace Depot. Now, it has been refurbished. It has been brought up to standards on what it would have looked like back then. It is beautiful. I kind of wonder if these train cars ever served a purpose. Because in the years and every time that I've been here, these just kind of always sit here. So these probably are all original. My guess is the museum, I guess, doesn't really have a need to go and repair them. So I guess that's maybe the reason why, due to budgeting and whatnot. But still, It's just really, really cool to walk up next to what is probably more than likely all original. And just look at the size of these wheels. In fact, you know, I could probably do a wheelie. All jokes aside, that is really, really cool. And since we are talking about logging in the Smokies, this beautiful artifact right here, or I shouldn't say not so much beautiful, probably more rustic, is what you call a log loader. You see, log loaders, they were steam driven pieces of equipment, and what they would do is they would be brought up the mountainside along the tracks, and while the lumber, or I should say the loggers, lumberjacks, as they would cut the wood, this big giant beast right here would lift up the wood and haul it into the cars. Now, as I was saying about the tracks were not really meant to last for long periods of time, only up to a couple of years until all the wood was stripped. But dude, look at all these gears. Kind of looks like it's kind of rusting away. Looks like the museum is keeping it in pretty good hands. If you look right here, this is where they'd either put in the coal or the wood, and it would power up the big giant crane. Alrighty, you guys, I think this is going to be another vlog for another day. It feels good just getting out on my day off from my other job and just having a little bit of fun. But you guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Always means a lot, goes to show that y'all care, and it really means a lot to me in this adventure of mine. So without further ado, this makes another vlog. Vlog over.